Hello and welcome to the #AdStudents podcast. Today it's just me and Billy because unfortunately Henry has work commitments, so it's just us two for today. We do miss our Henry, don't we?
I know. I don't know how we're going to go on.
But yeah, hopefully Henry will be back with us again next week. And today the subject that Billy and I will be discussing is healthy but unhealthy foods. So essentially foods that are described as or marketed as healthy, but actually there's an unhealthy undertone to it, or the actual product itself is unhealthy. So I'm going to kick this one off with very, very controversial at the moment, the fact that Cadbury's are reducing their chocolate bar size in their multi-packs. And the line that they said with this was that it's to help combat obesity. And it's only being reduced by a small amount. And each bar is now going to be 200 calories each. But I do believe that the price is staying the same. Personally, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I think Cadbury's highly underestimates how much I personally love chocolate, and there are most likely many others out there just like me, that if I brought a multi-pack of 200 calorie chocolate bars, I would probably eat the whole multi-pack. I'm not stopping at 200 calories on a chocolate bar.
I'm absolutely with you there, 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's a classic case. Look at Freddo's. Yeah, oh. When I was a child, they were like 5p, and now they're like 80 whatever.
I know,
I can't remember, but
it's ridiculous.
I know. And although, yes, perhaps they are thinking about the health of the country and, we're minimising the amount of chocolate that we can offer you in this multi-pack. But also you've got to think, production costs, they're probably making a mint on the resources they're saving. Even though they're reducing chocolate by little amounts, if you think cumulatively, they're probably saving a heck of a lot of resource.
Yeah, it's for me, I kind of think of it as, when you were talking about the Burger King crinkle chips, I think it was 2 episodes ago.
Yes, the Satis fries.
The Satis fries.
That would be great in ASMR, wouldn't it? Satis fries.
Yeah, but it's like when you were talking about the crinkle chips, sort of like when you go to have a takeaway, you don't necessarily go with the intention of being healthy. At least that was you personally. It's the same with me and chocolate. If I go to eat chocolate, I don't go with the intention of being healthy. I go with sort of almost binge eating the chocolate. Because I don't eat chocolate every day. It is a treat to me. So when I do eat it, I eat a lot.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because from what I'm taking from this is that they're trying to position themselves as more socially responsible. They care about the health of their customers, which I'm sure they do. But is it the way to go about it, keeping the same price? If they were really socially responsible, they would probably, reduce the price to match what it is that they're actually offering. But of course they're not going to do that. I mean, it doesn't make business sense, let's be honest, let's be real here. But what's wrong with a little notice on their packaging saying eat responsibly? Keep the size the same.
Yeah, I suppose there is, to the extent, because like most, I've actually got I've got a protein bar here. So a lot of chocolate bars now have this one doesn't actually have it on it, but they have like that colour coding system of sort of like the red, green and orange to like how, whether it's too much or a good amount to have in that size item, whether it's sort of like a good amount of salt, etc. And I think that's sort of they think they can get around it by having that, because obviously that is regulations to have that kind of thing on there with showing the salt and the sugar content. But at the same time, they try and disguise it as much as possible. They sort of put it in quite small text. They put it like right in the bottom in the corner, maybe where you can't see it. Maybe if there's like a little flap where the seam of the chocolate bar wrapper goes along, it might be under there. I don't think they necessarily want to display what the content of their chocolate bar or whatever unhealthy snack it actually has in it.
Yeah, you see, and this is where marketing can sometimes get a bit of bad press because people that don't study marketing just kind of assume that marketeers are out there to get you
Yeah.
and that they're there to deceive you. And in some cases, in bad marketing, then yes, that could be correct. But I think generally that's not the case.
What people have got to remember is that marketing teams are normally made up of individuals. They are people like you and me, Billy, who we have our own values, we have our own things that we like to stick to, we have our own moral standards. I mean, I know personally I wouldn't want to work for a company that I know is morally compromised unless I worked for a company that was morally compromised with the intention of changing it and sort of like changing those attitudes. Obviously there is, to an extent, that in a marketing team you have to stick to certain business standards and certain business views, otherwise it just wouldn't make sense for the business to sort of be doing certain things.
Well, this is why I love marketing so much, because it's quite subjective in the sense that messages are always open to interpretation.
Yeah.
So, what one person thinks is, socially responsible, others think, oh, they're trying to deceive me there. And at the end of the day, you're never going to win all customers, and you're never going to, satisfy everyone. So in some ways it's almost like a lose-lose. You can't please everybody, but I don't think Cadbury's are doing anything wrong with what they're doing, really. But I do think perhaps the price maybe should be reduced a little bit. Yeah, I was going to say,
that's probably where my sort of like outrage is with it. Not outrage, I wouldn't say it's outrage, it's just sort of like one of those little things that maybe gives me like a little bit of a temper tantrum for about 5 minutes, and then I'm just like, okay, I'm fine now, I can deal with it.
It's one of those things that you just go, really?
Yeah, and if I wanted to buy copious amounts of chocolate, I would probably buy like those massive, almost like 1/2 meter long Cadbury's bars.
Oh, I'm so
which
hungry.
Aren't that expensive, by the way. They're about 10 quid from the Cadbury's website. That's amazing. But yeah, no. If I really wanted to eat that much chocolate, I would buy that.
Do you think they're at risk? So do you think they're at risk here though? Because some people could assume, oh, they've reduced the amount, therefore rather than having one, I'll have two.
Yeah.
And then having two becomes the norm for them. And then
they're actually having more than they were before, but just by having one.
So could, in a way, perhaps encourage consumption.
And I suppose it's kind of because they're not doing it with their normal single sale bars either. It's the bars that are in multi-packs. So if you buy a multi-pack, you're getting however many, I think it's 4 that's in a multi-pack. And if you think, oh, well, I'll have 2, then it's sort of like you can have 2, because it's not like you have to pick up 2 separate bars in the shop and buy them separately. You just have to pick up 1 pack and it's there. And it's in your cupboard.
And it will become more habitual, and people will see them as a small snack and think, oh, I'll have 2 of those. Oh, I might have another one actually. By the end of the night, they're all gone.
That's what I mean. I would probably very easily make my way through a multi-pack.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like those
100%,
fun-sized bags with
here.
the little Malteser packets in. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. When those bags say, to share, I think, yeah, right, to share with myself.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that. I mean, obviously it's sort of like responsible from a marketing perspective, and where it says on the packaging, like perfect for sharing, because it's sort of like it's encouraging people to share it. But I think from a consumer point of view, when I pick up a sharing pack of Maltesers and I'm sitting down watching Bridget Jones with a glass of wine, I'm making my way through all of that. I just describe to myself as the classic basic watching Bridget Jones with a glass of wine.
I was going to actually make a comment there. We all know that nobody shares those bags. Each to their own. I can't complain. I sit in my room in the darkness drinking honey out of the bottle. So, you know me. who am I to judge?
I'm painting mushrooms, but your paintings are beautiful, to be fair, so...
I know, I'm such an artiste.
You are.
And this is just a little plug. If anybody wants to buy any of my paintings, they are originals. You can contact me on social media at Billy Little. Thank you very much. So, speaking of which, I've got a little bit of a different angle to this podcast question / debate / discussion. So we've been talking about the Cadburys and the impact on the physical health of customers and encouraging excessive consumption and how it could impact their physical health. But I would like to talk about how it could also be marketed, food could also be marketed as a cure for mental health, or to ease mental health. So the classic campaign that I've mentioned about 5 times since this podcast has launched. I think if you go through every podcast, I mention it at least once, but it is the 2017 McDonald's Filet-O-Fish campaign. And it's a campaign that features a mother and her son, and they're sharing a Filet-O-Fish, and basically they're saying, oh, your father loved these, and it... Essentially what they're doing is they're justifying the consumption of food because it's a way of feeling closer to their past relatives. That's what most people got from that message. It didn't get banned from the ASA because actually McDonald's took the initiative to pull it based on consumer response, but it did receive 255 official complaints to the ASA, so clearly it caused a little bit of grief for consumers. So what's your opinion here, on how food could be marketed as a way of, feeling close to your loved ones who have died? It's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, see, I do kind of understand that in a sense, because food traditionally can be a way to bring people together. Like if you have a family dinner or something like that, and I know lots of food cultures, food is used as a way to bring people together, and I can understand that perspective of it, but I do also think that it encourages things like eating when you're sad, and obviously that can lead to things that are so much worse. Like it can encourage eating disorders. Some people might have watched that who have either known someone or themselves suffered from something like an eating disorder, and sort of thought, that's not very responsible of McDonald's, sort of encouraging eating when you're emotionally compromised. It's sort of like you're a bit vulnerable.
Yeah. And do you think it kind of increases the risk of them perhaps becoming dependent on food?
Yeah.
To cure that pain?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is sort of like a lot of people who have suffered from eating disorders. Some of it has been because they're suffering from emotional pain, and sort of like food, because food does bring joy when you eat it. It can make you feel happy. But that shouldn't be the only cause of happiness that you're bringing into your own life. And I think encouraging that is not necessarily healthy. I think encouraging something as well as that, like I'm going to go with the classics here of regular exercise, talking to friends and things like that. But yeah, I do understand both perspectives. I think it could have been handled a lot more. So if they wanted to do something of bringing people together, I think a much more... almost like a better way of doing it, because I know some families they send out 2 people from their family, they go and pick up their McDonald's and they bring it all back, and there's 5 of them in the house, but only 2 people go out and get it. So I think maybe from that perspective is sort of, if they wanted to show it bringing people together, they could have had someone's gone out, got a takeaway McDonald's, they bring it back to their family, and it's sort of like, oh, you like this sandwich as well. Sort of or our family's different because we all like the Filet-O-Fish sandwich, rather than encouraging eating when you're emotionally compromised.
Yeah, I mean, you know this, but what our viewers don't know is that my cat just passed away today. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to be scoffing down breadsticks and hummus to make myself feel better, And it's a very sensitive issue, bereavement. So I think it's perhaps a little bit unethical of McDonald's, which is why they rightfully took it down. I mean, full props to them. They listened to their customers, they took it down. So this is no way to be shady to McDonald's. I had a McDonald's a few days ago. It was delectable, succulent, scrumptious. Yeah, I think there's a very fine line marketers have to, be aware of, particularly when it comes to food, and in particular unhealthy foods, which is why there's so many regulations laid out by the ASA. I mean, it's not like we're given free will to do anything we want, really. I mean, there's stuff put in place. A lot of the clients that I worked with whilst I was on placement were related to food, and the amount of regulations and is beyond comprehension. People that don't study this subject wouldn't know, but there is so much regulation put in place. But to me, it's interesting how there's kind of two areas of this topic. You've got your physical health, but you've also got your mental health. So yeah, that was interesting to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think probably another sort of a tricky one to tread the path down is that with the McDonald's bereavement campaign is marketing sort of a mother and her child, and it's sort of like promoting that sort of like giving your child not necessarily healthy food. Encouraging that from a young age I don't think is a very good thing, and I think sort of like the vulnerability of young children needs to be considered when you do market food, because I know as a child myself, I mean not a child now, but when I was a child, I know if I saw something that I thought looked delicious and I was like, yeah, I really want that, and if someone said, yeah, you can have it, I would take it. I wouldn't have been like, no thanks. Yeah, I do think that that's something that sort of like you need to be sensitive around, or marketers need to be sensitive around, is when children are involved in sort of like...
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that's the same with cereals. So I know a few years ago there was like a massive upheaval about cereals sort of being typically and stereotypically a healthy breakfast item to give your kid before they go off to school. But actually, a lot of cereals aren't healthy at all. I mean, two of my personal favourites, Cookie Crisp and Curiously Cinnamon.
Oh, you've missed out a key one there. Oh. I've got to step in.
Golden Nuggets.
Golden Nuggets.
Yeah. Knew it.
Oh my gosh. But they're so high in sugar.
Yeah.
And if you actually measure out the recommended portion size, it's like 4 Golden Nuggets.
Yeah,
it's like...
Literally. But that's the thing. It's sort of like our favourite childhood cereals, I probably wouldn't give to my own children when I have them, like because I know now it's sort of like, yeah, they taste amazing and they're great, but it's not necessarily healthy. And I can kind of understand now, when I was younger, that my mum was like, no, you're not having frosted shreddies, you're having normal shreddies, because frosted shreddies, the frosted part is literally sugar. It's all just sugar. It's sugar-coated shreddies. But obviously they don't want to call it sugar-coated shreddies. So they call it frosted.
I know. I was never allowed Cookie Crisp. I always used to, Mum, please, because you used to see the adverts all the time, didn't you? With the wolf or the fox, I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, Mum, please, cookies for breakfast. I mean, I understand why she didn't give me them, but it's like, oh, Mummy, please.
I think my mum gave it to me probably a few times, not a lot.
I think I have with like birthdays or something.
Like once a year, yeah, as a treat. And normally, by the age that I was probably maybe 13, 12, 14, 12, 13, one of those ages. When my mum would start, but when I was younger, she wouldn't. But when I was that age anyway, I was coming home from school and having a bowl of cereal, because like, obviously when you're growing, you're very hungry. So like, have a snack when you come in before you have dinner. Or at least that's how it was for me. Me and my brother sort of like, we'd come in and just like raid the kitchen.
Oh, all the time. Open the fridge, look in the fridge. If there's nothing in the fridge, close the fridge.
And come back 5 minutes later and look in the fridge again, even though nothing's changed.
There's nothing changed. I still do that now. Sometimes I open the fridge, even though I know I haven't been shopping.
Yeah.
And I just look, and I'm like, And actually, if anyone's interested in this, there is actually a journal article about this.
Okay.
Behind the psychology of why people open the fridge and then just close it. And it's actually psychological, because people perceive that there's a benefit. There's going to be some kind of treat when they open the fridge. And so it becomes habitual. And so people just do it to feel that sense of, oh, there's going to be a treat. It is, and I'm a complete geek for even knowing there's a journal article out there about it. But there is. Billy the Bookworm. There's a reason my nickname at primary school was Billy Bookshelf.
Billy Bookshelf.
Either that or I look like a bookshelf. I don't know.
You don't look like a bookshelf. You look beautiful, Billy. So that's it for today, guys, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. If you missed last week's episode, make sure to give it a listen. So goodbye from me, Katie, and goodbye from Billy.
Bye!
And we hope for you to listen in next week. Have a good day. Bye.